Welcome to the Project Management Prepcast, helping you prepare for the PMP exam. Here's your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner.
Hello and welcome to the Project Management Prepcast, where the PMBOK guide suddenly seems to become so much more interesting. I'm your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner. Project Human Resources Management is our topic. In this knowledge area, we find the processes that will enable you to manage people and teams for your project. And yes, there are an inordinate amount of soft skills. For an overview of human resources management, we must recognize the similarities and differences and skills needed for human resources management and managing human resources. Then there is the planning of human resource needs, the acquiring and obtaining of those human resource needs. And once we have them on our project or replace them, well, how do we project managers get the most out of our human resources? And then, of course, also the responsibilities of the project team members and the project manager have to be discussed. To get a high-level understanding of human resources management, let's look at three cornerstones of the knowledge area, because project human resources management includes the processes that enable a project manager to best organize the resources, manage the resources and making them efficient, and lead the project team to greater heights and effectiveness. Or, in the official words from the PMBOK guide, Project Human Resource Management includes the processes that organize, manage, and lead the project team. There are 4 processes in this knowledge area, and it all begins with, of course, a planning process. The Plan Human Resource Management process. That is the process of identifying and documenting project roles, responsibilities, required skills, reporting relationships, and creating a staffing management plan. Please note, we don't talk about people yet. We only talk about the types of people we need, the types of responsibilities we have, the types of skills we are going to be using on our project. Once we have this plan, then we move on to figuring out, well, who's going to fill all of these roles, responsibilities, and skills in Acquire Project Team. That is the process of confirming human resource availability and obtaining the team necessary to complete project activities. Once the team is on board, well, we're going to have to make sure that they know what they have to do, and if they do not have the skills they need, that we develop those skills in them in the Develop Project Team process. That's the process of improving competencies, team member interactions, and overall team environment to enhance project performance. And of course, we also have to manage our project team in the aptly named Manage Project Team process. That is the process of tracking team member performance, providing feedback, resolving issues, and managing team changes to optimize project performance. And when we come to this slide here, and when I ask you the question, well, into which of the 5 process groups do you think our 4 processes fall? Well, 8 out of 10 times you can almost say, well, the first one it goes into the planning process group. And seriously, 8 out of 10 times in the PMBOK guide, that's actually the number. And it's no different here. We have Plan Human Resource Management. So the first one goes into planning. But then what? Okay, Acquire Project Team. What do we do here? We actually go out, we find people, we hire people, we bring them on board. Once we have them on board, we need to develop them. Maybe their skills are lacking, so we give them training, we find that training, we make sure that everybody is working at their top performance, and then we have to manage project team as well, because there's going to be conflict, and we're going to have to work with people and resolve these conflicts and work with them and do stuff. And have you noticed how well we do stuff in all of these three processes? Yes, acquire project team, executing. Develop project team, executing as well. And manage project team, executing as well. So, in project human resources management, we have 1 planning process and 3 executing processes. To begin our overview of project human resources management, let's take a look at the subtle differences between human resource management here on the left and managing human resources when we're actually doing it. So on the left-hand side, the project management of human resources, that is more about determining the staffing and skill needs for the project, organizing the plans and the team to coordinate the project efforts and arrangements, and strategizing what is the best setup, division of labor and activities, and other planning needs, all of which, to the extent of best practices, can be taught in a classroom. Whereas managing the human resources on the right-hand side is more about what you do when you have the resources, like tracking individual performance, providing feedback, especially in terms of the coaching and mentoring type activities that may occur between team members or with the project manager. Motivating people is part of this, and getting them to complete assignments on time and to expectations, and of course managing conflicts, the promotion of healthy conflict and dealing and resolving negative conflict, just to list a few examples. These skills and good practices, they are best experienced and much more difficult to teach in the classroom. As with all the knowledge areas of the PMBOK guide, it's always important to remember that the processes in this knowledge area here, they're not done or considered to be in isolation, but they are highly integrated with processes in other knowledge areas. For example, when you're creating or recreating the WBS, there may be the need to add or remove team members or other resources from the plans. Or anytime you add or remove team members, there is project risk, possibly positive risk due to the new skill set that the new resources brings onto the team and how they work well with the team, or negative in the case of someone lacking the needed skill set or being toxic to the project environment. Or, for one more example, think about how new or changed resources could impact activity durations or cost. If they're really good, things will go much faster, but if they're a bit lacking, they may drag you back and things take longer and cost more. Every project is unique, and every project has its own factors that affect performance of the team and the project itself. When it comes to some broad and common considerations, let's talk about the team environment, because building the most conducive and productive environment, that is our responsibility as the project manager. But that task is easier or more difficult based on the history and culture of the team and the enterprise, and even the geographical location or the physical facilities that the team is working in must be considered, because the company culture and the team culture is always closely associated with the culture that is outside of the doors of your physical working space, because you bring the culture from your society into your company, into your team. But even weather patterns and other elements outside of your doors could be factors. I'm thinking that running an Alaskan pipeline project in the tundra, that may be operated differently than here in cozy, warm Southern California. Also, the communications and communication styles of you and everyone involved will be a factor that affects performance. And then, of course, to keep it really very broad, there's going to be company politics and also enterprise environmental factors that are going to affect your project's performance and the team. And to do all this human resources stuff, well, the project manager needs skills like leadership, which includes carrying forward the vision of the project and stakeholder needs, awareness, both cultural, environmental, and emotional, motivation, both of yourself and the team, collectively and individually. You need interpersonal skills, which includes active listening and emotional intelligence. You need professionalism and ethical conduct and conflict management abilities, both recognizing and reacting to the positive and negative aspects of conflict. Yes, being able to manage projects well hinges on your interpersonal soft skills, but there is also reliance on what is known as general management skills like organizing, negotiating, reporting, giving appropriate and meaningful feedback, as well as leading and influencing your team. Project Human Resources Management has as many faces as you have different types of resources on your project. You as the project manager are challenged in your capacity to lead and direct various groups of stakeholders on the project. To name just a few, there's the project team, the customer, the end user, and the project sponsor. More of how to manage these is covered in our lessons on stakeholder management, of course. You, however, are in charge of the project, and it is in your best interest to influence them in such a way that the project reaches its desired goals and purpose. Project Human Resource Management is first about figuring out who the people are that you need for your project. This also includes what skills they have or need to obtain, maybe in the form of training or working with other team members. When they are to come onto the project or leave the project, and any policies or procedures to onboard or offboard team members, then we need to talk about the responsibilities that they have once they are on the project, and who do they report to, and how do we reward or recognize our team members when they're doing a good job. These are just a few of the questions that the project management team faces in this knowledge area. Another part of HR management is getting those resources that you planned for. This might mean that you get them by begging, borrowing, and stealing, or whatever your enterprise encourages for you, or maybe hiring new ones from the outside. Or it might even mean you get whoever they give you. You have no or little choice at all. You work with whomever was assigned to your project, also known as pre-assignment. But no matter what, negotiation is probably the technique that you're going to be using heavily to acquire the resources. And then you're also going to have to decide how to best utilize those resources during the life cycle of the project. A lot of this acquisition depends on your project's organizational structure and enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets. Of course, you're often not alone in this responsibility. In many companies, the HR department will play a major role when it comes to hiring new resources. Good relationships are indispensable. How much HR is going to be involved in depends on your company and your project's organization. Do you have a projectized organization where you as the project manager are given full authority to do everything it takes to get the project done? Here the HR department will be assisting you in your search for the resources. Or at the other end of the spectrum, are you in a functional organization where the resources are assigned to your projects? Your resources may be assigned for you, pre-assigned for you. Here the HR department will work with the functional manager to get the right resources, and the functional manager will be telling you whom to work with. And of course, there is a wide spectrum of other organizational structures that fall between these two ends, between projectized and functional. There could be a matrix organization, and we'll also have to consider enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets, such as the complexity of the project, the company culture, and hiring practices that dictate how much say you do or do not have. Working with people may be a struggle for some project managers because as project managers we're often very well trained in the hard skills, tools and techniques, but potentially less so in our soft skills, that squishy interpersonal stuff. Therefore, executing our role on projects, it's going to require us to bring everything together, leveraging the hard skills and, more importantly, also everyone leveraging the soft skills, and that simply may not come so easily to us. And to do this effectively, we are going to have to convey the vision and purpose of the project to the team. This means we are going to be faced with technical issues, like what resource is best suited to work on certain tasks that require a specific skill, but also political issues that emerge, both from within the team and from without, as well as those social and cultural issues that may arise, like dealing with the work styles of various team members or your ability to hold effective dialogue with team and customers. Granted, just because you planned the resources you need and then possibly obtained the right resources, you can't expect them to be immediately effective or even bond as a team. There is a definite need to create the most effective and efficient project environment. You will also have to ensure that everyone has the right competencies as a group and as individuals. The onus here is on the project manager to develop the right team environment and interactions as a team. This may be directly done by the project manager or at times indirectly. It really depends on your team and the changing dynamics of the team and your skills, such as your interpersonal skills, your emotional intelligence, and varying factors that are influencing the project. Here is where your soft skills and knowledge of motivational and organizational theories really comes into play. And another major part of your project human resources management is managing the performance, the changes, the roadblocks, and more. When managing the human resources, you need best practices to track and observe performance and progress and give feedback, mentor and coach when appropriate, maybe in the form of appraisals or in simple, informal manners. You will need to be managing the changes to the team, the environment, and the other dynamics affecting them. And when working with people, there is bound to be conflict. So the element of conflict management and people skills, they're all part of your role as the project manager. The human resources and staff on the project may change throughout the life cycle of the project, sometimes per plan, sometimes unexpectedly, sometimes by choice or by no other option. Team members are going to be added at various points in the project. There are team members that are added in order to complete only one activity and then exit. Others are added to the project in the first minute and never leave the project until the last minute. Nonetheless, you must manage how resources are rolled off the project and returned to their day jobs, or handle times when those unexpected departures impact your project. When the team is together, all teams go through predictable stages of team development, some quicker than others, but they go through it nonetheless. These stages revert back to the first stage of forming whenever there is addition or attrition. Getting back to performing should not take as long once the team has formed and bonded, although that depends on the team and the skills of the project manager to retain the productivity levels that existed prior to the change. Projects need project teams and project managers to execute the work and the management activities. Project team members on the left, they must follow through with assignments and project plans, and they must be supporting the project efforts. The project managers, on the other hand, well, we have the overarching responsibility of providing direction and clarity. We have to be addressing conflicts, encouraging positive conflict and discouraging negative conflict. And we establish and enrich, hopefully, the project environment so that the project team members can be as effective and as efficient as possible. Here are some high-level sample questions that you may find in the commercially available tests. We're not going to give you the answers to these here because the answers you will learn as you work your way through the lessons about the processes here in Project Human Resources Management. So one question could be, how do you best create an effective project environment? And of course, the options here, they vary. There's a range of answers that you could have. Nevertheless, when you look at the answer choices, you should find one that just makes the most sense, especially if you look at what is the ideal project environment that the PMBOK guide is trying to have us work in so that we increase team member productivity, or what processes are necessary to carry out human resources management. Well, definitely, these will be covered in detail in all the lessons in this knowledge area module. And who is responsible for assigning resources in various project organizations? Like, who assigns resources in a projectized environment versus in a matrix environment? We'll look at all of these. And we'll also talk about roles and responsibilities because they're often part of sample test questions. The questions here are usually situational and they ask things like, who is the best person to address a particular issue? And here the only way to find the best answer is by understanding the generally defined roles of project stakeholders. And then you'll always find situational questions about conflict, and you have to find the best way to address the conflict. And to look just a little bit ahead here, usually the best answer about responding to conflict is problem solving, which we also know as the confronting approach. You are confronting the problem, you are solving the problem. And this concludes our overview of Project Human Resources Management. But before we go, here is a quick exam tip for you. As you are reviewing a particular lesson here in the Prepcast or reading a section of the PMBOK guide, you may think to yourself, well, in my company, we don't do it this way. And you may say, well, all this theory is nice, but what about the real world? Well, we know it's not always like it is described in the book. PMI knows this, and they acknowledge that being a project manager isn't always as black and white as the PMBOK guide describes it. And PMI also doesn't say that all projects have to be run this way. No. What PMI says is that it would be really ideal, it would be fantastic if all projects were run this way, following the best practices of the PMBOK guide. And as a project manager, you should strive to implement the body of knowledge from the PMBOK guide in your company and in your projects. You also have to make sure that you stay focused on your goal here and not get sidetracked with questions like, but what about the real world? Because you want to pass the PMP exam, and on the PMP exam, the PMBOK guide rules. So how do you make sure that you keep the focus and pass your PMP exam? Well, simply follow the rules. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're taking the driving test. Well, when you drive on your own, you may not always stop at every stop sign or stop when the light turns yellow and, oh, it's 50 here, but I'm going 55. But for the 45 minutes of your behind-the-wheel driving test, you know exactly which rules you have to follow. And the same goes for the PMP exam. You know that there may be differences between what you do at work and what the PMBOK guide says. But during the hours of the exam, the PMBOK guide rules. You approach every single question with those best practices in mind. The best possible way of doing things can be found in the PMBOK guide. And with that, we have come to the end of this lesson. So Justine says,
Bye-bye.
and it's until next time from me.